What is up, my friends? Welcome back to the Home Slice. This episode, we launch a series, Paramilitary 2 versus everything. This is going to be kind of like the tournaments that I've been doing, but I'm going to do it more gauntlet style, where we have different models of the Spyderco Paramilitary 2 facing off against different Spydercos. And some of you may wonder through my mid-size and full-size folders why I didn't have more Spyderco products represented. You're probably like, hey, you're a sharpening nerd. Like, why don't you carry more Spyderco? They're like the best manufactured heat treatment available. And that would be a fair point if you said that. There is a reason for that. And the reason is that I sort of carry Spyderco knives for a different reason, and they sort of fit a different sort of subcategory in my mind. For one thing, just a second. Okay, this is a Benchmade 940, which won the large folder carry competition. And this is sort of like the outline of a knife that I prefer to have in my pocket. Now, that's really slim and long, and a lot of edge going on for the size. And those are big preferences of mine. Now, Spyderco knives, so for instance, this is a Manix, and I'm not trying to bash on the Manix, I'm just trying to illustrate why I'm separating this into a different series. The Manix is probably about twice as wide as this Benchmade 940, and there's significantly less edge because they've made this excellent grip choil up here, which gives you amazing control. And so I recognize people going to be fighting me in the comments, like the Manix is better for this reason or that reason. And I'm not trying to say one is better than the other, but you'll notice that for a much bigger carry, you don't have quite as much edge. Now, the reason why I want to separate these off is because if I brought these in to the regular tournaments that I've been doing, I'm pretty sure that as far as the edge keenness and the sharpening dynamics go, they would blow everything else out of the water. But because they have a 10 or 11 millimeter hole in them, that takes up a certain amount of blade surface. And so to have a strong blade, you need a bunch more blade over here. And that adds up to necessarily having to have a wider blade. And then that's got to be housed, you got to have a backer behind that to house it inside of the handles. And so you end up, by necessity with Spyderco, needing to have a much wider and larger footprint. And then couple that with the fact that they really like these precision grips up here, and so they put some grip very often into the blade, and so you lose a little bit of edge. So if I put it into my normal tournament, I would constantly be explaining that this has a little bit less edge and it's going for a sort of different thing, and they would be sort of losing on the edge and size side of things and winning on the edge retention side of things all the time, I think, which would be fine, but I thought it would be nice to sort of put away my size preferences, because I find Spyderco knives are so good that they're worth foregoing my other preferences just to get them in my pocket. They're enjoyable enough, they're precise enough, they sharpen well enough, they hold an edge well enough. The geometry is always good on a Spyderco. It's always good. I've never had a Spyderco where I was like, oh, I wish this was thinner and better thought through at the edge. Never once in my life. And so I thought it would be good to give the knives that are really nailing the light, thin, slim, lots of edge dynamic for me, give them their spotlight and let them duke it out together. But then let Spyderco have their own spotlight, because they are worthy of being carried and enjoyed in their own right. So I thought what would be fun for a Spyderco series is to face off every model that I currently have against the Paramilitary 2. So this will be episode number 1. And I've got to send these guys back to Spyderco. I did some edge testing on them, but they'll be the first two things to face off against the Spyderco Paramilitary 2. It's the Chaparral Sun and Moon variant in CTS-XHP. Just beautiful little slicer by Sal Glesser. And the Spyderco Manix 2 in SPY27, which is just an amazing work knife, a work knife that has really, really grown on me, designed by Eric Glesser a few years back, and just has really endured and stood the test of time. This was probably the most enjoyable folding knife because of how well Eric's done the ergonomics to do the rope cut testing that I did with. Most folding knives, you develop real bad hot spots and stuff, but this Manix by Eric Glesser was just fine. Like, it just plowed through the rope. Against those will be the first ParaMilitary 2, which is this one that I have bought, and it's the Crucarta edition. I know, like, probably to be fair, I should face it off against a normal black ParaMilitary 2 in G10. With the S30V steel, but I don't have one of those. I wanted the Crewwear and my Carta variant. So this, guys, this is going to be my first ever ParaMilitary 2. And you may be like, what? Like, are you even a knife guy? That would be fair. That would be fair. But I carried a Spyderco military in M4 for like 4 years straight. And that was the only Spyderco that I had owned and carried really long term, and loved it. But during that time, I got rid of all my other knives, and I was like, hey, I'm just gonna simplify. I'm just gonna minimize a little bit and not have so much stuff. And I'm just gonna focus on sharpening and really enjoying this like tool. And so I went 4 years with a military, but I've never put a ParaMilitary 2 in my pocket. So this will be my first time. Totally fresh, totally new, totally blind. I've tested these others once before, and I really like both of them, but it will be interesting to try a knife that's a bit bigger in the Manix 2 with a bit more sculpted ergonomics, though the ParaMilitary is pretty generous in your ergonomics, and a little bit of a smaller carry to see, and a thinner knife that's slicier to see which one I prefer. And then we'll move on to another variant of ParaMilitary 2 and another couple variants of Spyderco knives. I'll give you some glamour shots of the knives here, and then I'll come back at you after 3 weeks. I'm gonna carry each one for 1 week. So I'll be back in just a few moments after 3 weeks in my life of knife carry, and let you know what I think of these 3 knives. Well, guys, there's a baby sleeping in one of my filming locations. It's the early morning, and there are some Airbnb guests staying in the other one of my filming locations. And so here I am. Welcome to my car. This is where we're going to film the wrap up to this video. I had a really great time. I'm really like coming into a Spyderco mode, and I have to admit, going through this Spyderco series, you guys may be just watching me finally become mostly a Spyderco carrying knife person. So I liked all 3 of these blades. The edge holding characteristics, the sharpening characteristics were great. They were excellent. This is obviously the second time that I've carried the Manix, and it's the second time that I have carried the Chaparral. I just wanted to give them a little bit more pocket time and screen time before I send them back to Spyderco. And I have to say, we'll start with the Manix. Every time I start carrying the Manix, I feel like it's too big. But every time I finish carrying the Manix, I'm like, oh, I really like that knife. And I always feel like this is a really ideal sort of work knife platform because it's so hand-filling. It's really ergonomic. It's one of the more ergonomic folding knives that I've ever experienced. And the lock is crisp and convenient. It really engages hard when it comes out and in. Really excellent lock characteristics in my opinion. and the whole design feels really like rugged, even though like it's a nylon handle, it's quite lightweight, but it really feels like a robust and work capable knife to me. So I really enjoyed the Manix. I did more of a toothy edge on the Manix and Chaparral. I think it was 400 grit Veneve with edge leading strokes, and just stropped that. And this, I don't know exactly how to describe it, because it's not like it held the fine edge for a really long time. It's just that the working edge characteristics seemed finer. Like the working edge was more keen and crisp feeling than most knives for the entire week that I carried it. And through cutting up cardboard, through tons and tons of work, really good working edge. And it would strop back. Like I would take it to the strop, and I like the strop characteristics of SPY27 steel, which is what's in this CPM SPY27. So I like the way that it strops back really keen. When you strop it back, it doesn't stay, in my experience, at that really crisp edge. It just settles back to that really nice high level keenness working edge. But as soon as it starts to feel like unpleasant to use, as soon as you have a little bit of edge breakdown, you can strop it and it goes back to really nice and then settles back in, and you get another stretch, in my experience, of that really nice working edge where your slicing characteristics are just great. So really enjoyed that. Next we'll talk about the PM2, which is actually still in my pocket because I carried it this week. The PM2, I like the look. I like the look of the PM2. In my opinion, the paramilitary and the military series, they're really nice looking Spyderco knives. I like the compression lock. You can see that bounced back out. You can also see I did not clean it. I'm so bad about cleaning my knives before a video. And I really like the micarta. There are a few cons that I will get into with this knife, but overall, a very good solid knife. So in terms of the way it looks, I tend to like it a little bit better than the Manix, although the Manix, I just recognize the excellent design that's been done. And I do like that the Manix has overall a little bit of a thinner profile. In addition, I like the micarta handle a little bit better than the nylon, although the nylon is beginning to grow on me, and I feel like I'm just becoming one of those old Spyderco guys that's just like, just give me good steel and FRN. I'm like on my way, guys, okay? Just give me some time. But I really felt like the finish was great. The ergonomics obviously are great on this. I used to carry a military all the time, and the paramilitary feels like another expression of that great design. I felt like the compression lock hollow here was not uncomfortable for me in my grip positions that I use. When I'm doing it in the kitchen, I pinch grip around the pivot quite a lot with this particular model of knife. And I found that that was just as comfortable as my full-size military used to be. And I didn't find the edge to be too small. I'm just so used to, from carrying a military model for nearly 5 years straight, the edge length on the military that offers. And I have to say, if I carried them back to back, I'm sure this would feel a lot smaller in my pocket. But not having that frame of reference, it feels like a big knife. Like, it still feels really big in my pocket. And so I kind of want that amount of edge to be there, but I didn't find that there were a lot of tasks that this felt like lacking in edge length, because my reference point in the past was the military. So I really love the PM2, very like rugged design, and again, like a great like work knife, and crew wear is good, but as I'm sure I'll have come out with a video before this about, I did have some problem with the edge rolling over, and this really was a revelation to me that like there's like nothing wrong with this knife, and that I need to maybe reckon with the fact that my sharpening method is a little bit unpredictable, and let people know about that, and kind of modify my recommendations to use it, and just let people know like, hey, like, I never know what this thing's gonna do. Like, sometimes it's totally amazing, and sometimes the edge rolls over and you're like cutting with a rounded edge on crew wear, which should never be the case. I'm sure that's not the fault of the steel and the heat treatment, and I'm gonna go and resharpen this in some other styles of edges and try out crew wear. And so we won't really count that against it. The one thing that I will say is I had a hard time at first flicking this out. It's broken in now and it's doing pretty well. But I also, because of that, I was like, what's going on? And I looked at the detent, and on this particular knife, the detent is smooshed in a little bit farther than I think it should be. And when you go to put it away, it wants to bounce back out almost every time. I don't know if you've seen that when I've closed it these last few times, but it's just a little lighter on the detent. It doesn't quite catch almost every time. And I've got some other Spydercos coming up in this series, and I've tried them, and the detents are all perfect in all the ones that I have tried. So that time it went in. But this one does have a little bit of a mushy detent, and that is a little bit of a bummer. I don't think it's something that's going to prevent me from using and enjoying crew wear steel, and I think I'll definitely keep this one in the rotation for a good long time to get some good miles on crew wear. But it is something that may keep it out of the Hall of Fame, because I don't know if I want to keep it forever if I never know when it's still going to be open when it goes in my pocket. Or I have to check it each time to see if that's happened. So that's a little bit of a bummer. Between these two, I would say that I enjoy the design on the ParaMilitary 2 a little bit better, but I like the blade geometry and thinness on the Manix a little bit better, and I like the crispness of the lock closing better on the Manix. But coming to the Chaparral, I know I've already done a full review of this knife, and I'm not going to go through it all again, but I put a toothy working edge on this, and the edge retention on this XHP blew my mind. It did what people say crew wear does, more than crew wear has, in that it retained that keen edge for such a long time. It was ludicrous. And I ended up having a bunch of garden work and pruning to do, and I was worried that it was going to be too slick, and I was out there in leather gloves grabbing tree branches like this thick and chopping through them with the Chaparral at times. And guys, this thing did everything, and the slicing profile of a Chaparral is insane. Like, this thing is so thin. It just went through everything. And to be honest, I know this is my second carry of it, but after going through all of the knives that I thought were going to be the ticket, and I thought they were going to be just awesome, and coming back to this, I have to say, I have all of these things. I'm like, well, I have to have at least 3 inches of edge, because I really like to have a capable amount of edge, and I don't like things that are too wide, and all these different things that I've said. And I feel like in this model, Sal Glesser was just like, I see that, Gabe, and I raise you a knife with 60 millimeters of edge that does everything you want it to and works better than anything else that you are using. And I just fell in love with the Chaparral model. I really, really, really enjoyed carrying this. It's such a good, convenient carry size, especially for a Spyderco. And it's so thin and slicey. And guys, it just did all the things that I asked it to do. And I actually enjoyed the experience of XHP steel better than these other 2 steels, if I'm fully honest. I enjoyed it more than the crew wear experience I had this time, obviously because of the edge roll. I enjoyed it a bit more than SPY27, although I did enjoy SPY27. And I have to say, in this first round, so before I say this, you know it's coming, but I think that this is sort of a gauntlet style where we're going to try a ParaMilitary against a couple of Spydercos multiple times over. And so I'm not going to be carrying the same ParaMilitary over again. So I think that gives the question, like, we're not going to tournament it out. You know, it's just going to be in each one, does the ParaMilitary win or not? And so what is success in the tournament? And I think the ParaMilitary, I'm going to call success if it wins more than half of the episodes that I do. So there's going to be 4 episodes. It's going to face off against 8 other knives. And we're going to call it a success on the ParaMilitary if it wins 2 or more of those, okay? But the bad news for the ParaMilitary this round is that I have to say, I have to declare this guy the winner. because Sal Glesser just took me to school with this design and I fell in love with it, and it did everything I wanted it to do in such a small package, and the joy that it brought me was so great that I have to say my experience with all three of these knives was good, and they're great knives. Got to go back to the sharpening drawing board to pull the best out of crewware, but they're great steels. They're amazing designs. But I have to say, getting taken to school by Sal Glesser was such an enjoyable experience on this thing that I'm gonna declare the Chaparral the winner of this episode of ParaMilitary 2 versus everything. There's another video on screen now if you want, but for the rest of you, I'll say peace out from the home slice. Thanks for tuning into this episode, and we'll see you in the next episode of ParaMilitary 2 versus everything.